slideshow. All right, I think we are ready to go. Welcome everyone to this parallel session on Campbell and Cochrane information retrieval methods groups. Very happy to have you all here. Just to say a few words before we get started about our very generous sponsors for What Works Global Summit. Couldn't have done it without their support. And we are very happy today to have a great panel lined up of 3 presenters. We are going to be talking to you about information retrieval and evidence synthesis, a perspective from the Campbell and Cochrane information retrieval methods groups. And so today we have 3 presenters, myself included, Alison and Bethel. Both of us are co-conveners of the Campbell information retrieval methods group. And we're very lucky to have Carol Lefebvre here, who is the lead convener of the Cochrane information retrieval methods group. So we're going to go ahead and go through our presentations, and we're going to take questions at the end of the 3 presentations. So I'm up first. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm a librarian at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the US, where I support teaching, research, and library collections for public policy and management, decision sciences, politics and strategy, and statistics and data science. I'm also a founding member of our evidence synthesis service here. Previously, I was a health sciences librarian at Cornell University, where I provided systematic review support to researchers in global public health and nutrition. And I helped establish what is now a thriving systematic review service there for diverse disciplines. And I continue to support systematic reviews, and I conduct training and research on methods for evidence synthesis, mostly in international development and agriculture. And as I mentioned, I'm co-convener of Campbell Information Retrieval Methods Group, also an information specialist for the Campbell Business and Management Coordinating Group, and a member of the Campbell training team. So very happy today to be talking to you about an ongoing project that myself and a team from our information retrieval methods group have been working on to look at methods and reporting related to searching in Campbell systematic reviews. And some of you may have seen Heather McDonald's short talk in yesterday's methods and capacity building session on this same project. Today, we're just going to go into a bit more depth into what we've learned so far. So to kind of lay a bit of foundation for this talk, I wanted to start by just revisiting some of the existing standards and guidelines around reporting and systematic reviews. So there's an expectation, if not a mandate, for Campbell authors to adhere to one of 2 sets of existing reporting standards, so namely Messier or Prisma. And these really exist to ensure that methods are described in enough detail as to be both transparent and reproducible. But also sufficient reporting in systematic reviews serves sort of another more pragmatic purpose, and that is to make it easier to update reviews when they become outdated. So these standards really serve multiple functions. For the sake of time, I'm just going to spend a few minutes on Messier. This is the methodological expectations of Campbell collaboration intervention reviews. And this requires a number of search-related reporting items, including a list of all of the sources searched. This includes both website URLs, platform names for databases. So in other words, if you're searching Medline, did you search that in Ovid as opposed to PubMed? So that would be an example of a platform. It requires that the date of the last search be reported, so how up-to-date the review is, any restrictions on time frame that were implemented during searching, and a justification for imposing that date limit. And it requires the exact search strategies for every database. And then also a couple of items that are related to what we often call supplementary searching. So this is whether reference lists of included studies were searched and whether experts were contacted. So there's also, in addition to some guideline or the standards, there are some guidance documents that provide guidance around source selection and search methods and other aspects of systematic review. Cochrane Handbook is a great example of this, a key guidance document for any systematic review, and we'll be hearing more about that from Carol in our third talk today. But Campbell also provides a guidance document specifically around searching that was published in 2017 by Kugley and colleagues. So unfortunately, despite all of these reporting standards, checklists, guidance documents, we still see authors really struggling sometimes to achieve those high quality searches that we expect in systematic reviews, and certainly fully transparent and reproducible search reporting. And this is certainly the case in the general systematic review literature, so systematic reviews published outside of Campbell and Cochrane. And just as an example of some recent research on this, this 2019 study found in a random sample of reviews indexed in Medline errors in over 90% of reported search strategies. As we would expect, Cochrane reviews fare quite a bit better in this regard. So research has shown that, in fact, there's pretty good compliance to Cochrane reporting standards in published Cochrane reviews. But still, some evidence that authors are struggling to conduct searches, perhaps, with some issues that might limit sensitivity and precision of searches. As far as Campbell goes, there has been some recent research kind of starting to scratch the surface around search reporting and quality. Wong et al. In 2021 took a broad look at the methodological and reporting characteristics of Campbell reviews going back to 2011. And they found some evidence for incomplete search reporting in that study. In a more recent study, Ramirez and colleagues looked at adherence to published protocols, specifically in the Campbell Education Coordinating Group, and they found good adherence to protocols, which actually, interestingly, improved with the involvement of an information specialist. So that sort of brings us to the current work that we're talking about today. And we're sort of aiming here to kind of dig a bit deeper into what search methods and reporting looks like across Campbell review groups. So in doing this, we really hope to examine what current searching practices look like in Campbell reviews, how well the reporting in Campbell reviews adheres to these various standards that I've just mentioned, and also identify any emerging or novel methods that might be in use in Campbell systematic review. So in terms of our methods, we are looking at reviews going back to January of 2017. We're really interested in sort of current practices. And this actually gives us a pretty good data set of close to 90 reviews. We're not including evidence and gap maps or updates to systematic reviews that did not make changes to the original search strategy. We have 2 independent reviewers extracting data on almost 80 items related to search methods, reporting, and quality. And then those conflicts that arise in data extraction are resolved by a 3rd reviewer. So I just want to sort of run through a few kind of snippets of our preliminary findings. Again, this is an ongoing work and there's a lot more to be done, but just to give you a sense of what's to come here and what we hope to look at. So we do have a really nice representation over years from 2017 to 2022 in our data set. We also have good representation across some of the larger coordinating groups, so international development, social welfare, education, crime and justice represent the majority of the reviews in this data set. We're also kind of looking a bit at geographic focus. So we're interested in how well the source selection aligns with the stated geographic focus in these reviews. And so most of the reviews in our data set, about 58 of those 86 are looking globally. There's no real constraints on geographic region. About 20 are looking at low and middle income countries. We have 3 with a US focus and 1 with a Latin America and Caribbean focus. I should also note that actually this data represents 82 of the 86 studies. We have 4 studies still under data extraction. So in terms of planned analyses around source selection and reporting, we're interested in understanding the breadth of source selection. Are there, for example, at least 2 relevant databases that were searched? Is the gray literature adequately covered? Interested in the quality of source selection to some degree. So again, do these sources align with the stated geographic scope of a review? And we're also, of course, looking at reporting of sources searched. So in this case, are database names given? Are platforms reported as required by the Messier standards? Also interested in how Google and Google Scholar are being used in this context. So again, a couple snippets of data here. By and large, reviews are definitely looking at least 2 relevant databases. So that's a very positive finding. When we start to dig in around whether or not platforms are being reported, most reviews are reporting platforms for all databases searched. But we are seeing some reviews that are missing some reporting in that area. As far as sort of scope and breadth of gray literature searching, we've looked at whether or not these reviews are searching theses and dissertations as a separate source from what you would expect to find in a subject database. So in other words, are they doing searches specifically in, for example, ProQuest dissertations and theses, or another dissertations database, or simply relying on what is indexed in, say, PsycInfo? And we can see that a lot of them are, but there's quite a few that are still, that are basically just relying on picking up that gray literature in their other database searches. This kind of opens some interesting questions about how important is it to search theses and dissertations separately? How well are these types of studies covered in our disciplinary databases? I don't think a lot has been done to look at that, but it certainly raises some interesting questions. So in terms of search reporting, we are interested in looking at how complete search reporting is, how reproducible are these searches. So are all exact database searches given? Are all gray literature searches given? And really understanding how well reporting is aligning with the standards. So just again, some examples here of what we're finding. We are definitely seeing, in most cases, at least 1 full database search provided. This was actually the guidance or the standards in the PRISMA 2009 document. It only required one full database search. Now, with the update of PRISMA in 2020 to requiring all database searches. And like I said, Messier does require all database searches. When it comes to reporting all database searches, we're seeing, unfortunately, a few, good number, about 30 of our 82 studies not reporting all of their database searches. So again, these are sort of areas that we might look at to raise awareness, sort of ensure that this reporting is happening maybe through the peer review process. In terms of quality, we're not digging in too deeply here. We're not doing a full peer review of these searches, but rather just sort of looking at usage of syntax, Boolean operators, phrase searching, and subject headings when they're available for a database. Again, in terms of syntax, so we're basically looking for, are they using the proper truncation feature or the correct wildcards, for example, for the given database and platform. And for the most part, we're seeing pretty good usage of database syntax in these reviews. Another thing we're interested in sort of digging into a bit is what the impact or role of the information specialist is. So we are extracting data on whether or not an information specialist was involved and how they were involved. And just as a quick example here, in this case, we can see that in fact, for those studies that did not use database syntax correctly, a greater proportion did not include an information specialist compared to those that did use syntax correctly. As an information specialist, I'm not terribly surprised by this, but I think this is something we want to look at across some other measures as well. In terms of search methods, we are also interested in looking at supplementary searching. So again, our reference lists being searched, our experts being contacted. We're looking for the use of potentially novel or different kinds of methods around search strategy development. So, possibly automation, text mining, other tools of that sort. Also interested in how folks are reporting the information management aspects of reviews. So are they reporting their deduplication methods, for example? So a little look here at citation searching. So this is where we're looking backward, so looking at the reference list of included studies, definitely seeing most reviews reporting that they've done that. When it comes to looking forward, so going to a citation database like Google Scholar, like Web of Science, and looking at who has cited the included studies, that to me is good standard practice in a review. And we're seeing much less of that reported in these reviews. So I think there's some opportunity here to kind of raise awareness, possibly update the Messer standards to include a requirement for forward citation searching. So that sort of gives you just kind of a little snippet of what we're hoping to do with this data and what we are seeing so far. A few other things we're interested in looking at. The time lag between the last search date and the actual date of publication. So how up to date are the reviews upon publication? Again, as I mentioned, impact of the role of information specialists, degree of alignment with reporting standards, possibly looking at some kind of temporal or sort of longitudinal analyses, looking at how reporting has changed over time, or maybe looking at how reporting differs by coordinating group, and then identifying the most common gaps and errors in search reporting as well. And I think there's a lot of implications for this work. So I think we can definitely use these findings to inform the training initiatives that are underway for Campbell authors, looking at where maybe those sort of pain points or lack of clarity might be that might require a bit more training and support, updating guidance documents and raising awareness and usage of those guidance documents, possibly making adjustments to the peer review process to make sure that these reporting characteristics are actually adhering to standards. I think this also serves as a nice baseline for future assessment. So if we do implement a new training program or another guidance document update, we can sort of look at sort of pre and post that implementation to understand the impact of those efforts. Also, like I mentioned, we are interested in identifying emerging methods or thinking about, if there are methods that we could bring to the table in Campbell reviews to maybe automate or speed up processes or make use of text mining tools and things like that to build more robust searches. And finally, possibly identifying new avenues of methodological research. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and just thank our many authors, Alison Bethel, Ursula Ellis, Diana Loudon, Heather McDonald, David Pickup, Zara Premji, and Rowena Rogers are all co-authors on this work. And we had a number of other authors who helped us get the protocol together quite a while ago now. But many thanks to all of these great collaborators. Numerous references here. Happy to share these slides if you're interested in having a list of these. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, and I'm going to move on to our next talk. Let me get my screens unshared. We're going to hear now from Alison Bethel. She's going to be presenting about the use of search summary tables to help in the evaluation of search methods and search strategies, and Campbell reviews and evidence gap maps. So Alison is an embedded research fellow in information science for the evidence synthesis team, which is part of the applied research collaboration of the Southwest Peninsula at the University of Exeter Medical School in the UK. And she has been in this post for over 10 years. She's an author on over 50 published evidence syntheses, including systematic, rapid mapping, realist, and scoping reviews on a wide range of topics in healthcare, public health, and environmental management. She also undertakes information retrieval methods research, teaches searching skills to postgrads, staff, clinicians, and members of the public. Prior to this, Alison worked in a variety of information library and project management roles at the Environment Agency and research institutes in the UK. She's my fellow co-convener of the Campbell Collaboration Information Retrieval Methods Group and an active member of European Association for Health Information and Libraries and the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, Health Libraries Group in the UK. So with that, I will go ahead and welcome Alison to go ahead and share her slides and get us started with her talk.
Thanks very much, Sarah. That was really interesting because being sort of partly involved in the project, it's brilliant to see some of the results. And it's been a labour of love for you and a couple of the other team members. So it's really good. But today my presentation is about using search summary tables to help evaluate search methods and search strategies for evidence synthesis. And this work is being carried out by myself and my colleague Naomi Shaw for the Health Services and Delivery Research Programme, which is part of the National Institute of Health and Care Research here in the UK. So the two projects I'm going to talk about today are both evidence and gap maps. And project one has been published as a Campbell evidence and gap map, but the second one is still underway. So the first one is a project which we undertook about the volume and diversity of peer support in health and social care. And I did present a couple of these slides yesterday, so my apologies if I'm covering the same ground for anyone who was there. So the project was in two stages. The first stage required searching for systematic reviews. And you can see from this slide, we searched 8 databases and we undertook 6 different methods of supplementary searching. So once that screening had been complete and we had the included articles, we then went on to stage 2, where we searched just for randomized controlled trials. And for this part, we searched in 4 databases and undertook 3 different supplementary search methods. But today, I'm only going to be talking about the systematic review part of it, not the randomized control part. So at the end of the project, we completed a search summary table, and this is the bottom bit of the search summary table. The table is done in 2 stages. So the first stage involves listing the included papers. So over here, the database is searched and the types of supplementary searching undertaken. And then you go through the non-deduplicated references from your search to find out which searches in which databases found the included papers. Okay, so the second stage requires you to go back into some of the databases, and they're indicated here in red, and rerun your search to find out whether those not captured at the search stage are actually in the database, and then whether you rerun this, when you rerun the search, does it or does it not pick them up? Okay. So some of the results, the search summary table can look very confusing, but what I've done is pulled out some what I think are interesting results. So there were 32 included articles, 30 were obtained from database searching and 2 from supplementary searching. And all of the included references were journal articles. So no grey literature was included in this evidence and gap map. And 7 of the 8 databases found included articles. So the only one that didn't find any was ProQuest dissertations and theses, which, doesn't come as any surprise, as all the format, as they were all journal articles. There were no theses made it through to the final inclusion. And there were 3 databases that found unique references, plus forward citation chasing, and Google Scholar found 2 additional references. So I presented this slide last night, and it shows us that searching 3 databases would have picked up the 30 included articles, and the number needed to screen, if we had just done this, would have been reduced by about 3,000. I'm not saying that that's what we should do, but that's what would have happened if we'd done that. But it's also interesting to see that the 2 additional articles picked up from the supplementary searching were actually in Medline, PsycInfo and Embase. And when we ran our searches in those databases again, those references were picked up. So it just means they were put into the database after we'd actually run the searches. And another thing to note is that Epistemonicus had all 32 of the articles in there, but our search only found 7. So that was a really interesting point for us, that we hadn't searched Epistemonicus very effectively. So then we thought we'd evaluate the search strategy in Medline. And again, I presented this last night, so I'm just going to go through it fairly quickly. The original search had 119 lines of search. And when we edited this, we went through to find out which lines of search found the included articles. We could edit it down to 18 lines of search. And then we decided to challenge ourselves to see if we could reduce it even further and still keep the numbers to screen pretty low. So we were able to revise it down to 2 lines of search. And all 3 of those different searches found all of the 30 systematic reviews. So, and that's the number of records that you would screen. So from 1,700 down to 463. And the 2-line search would have been this. And again, we're not saying that this is a good way to search, or that it would work for anything else, so we haven't, if we update the map, we don't know if that search is going to work again. So we need to keep evaluating it, and from the original, the edited, and this revised one. Okay, so the second project on remote monitoring was for long-term physical conditions, and it was also an evidence and gap map. But this time we're only looking for systematic reviews. And for this one, we searched 12 databases. But do note that we have put Google Scholar and Prospero in the database list, as we searched both of them at the same time as the databases, and we combined them in with the database search results, which is why they're in there. And this time we did forwards and backwards citation searching as a supplementary search methods. And again, this is the search summary table for this project. And you can see that we reran the searches in Embase, Medline, and Epistemonicus for this one. So going on to some of the results. So there were 74 included articles, 63 came from database searching, and 11 from supplementary searches. And that was both forwards and backwards citation searching. The format of the included literature is different from the previous one, with 69 of the 74 articles being journal articles. And there are 2 theses, and a report, a letter, and a protocol. And interesting, both of those theses did come from ProQuest dissertations and theses. So that kind of links back to what Sarah was saying earlier. If we report on this, then we find out exactly which database they were found in, and that helps us determine what databases to search in the future. And database searching was also quite different. We found unique references in 9 of the databases, and only 1 database, which was OT Seeker, found no included references. So for this project on remote monitoring, the database combinations are those 9 databases which found unique references. And the maximum number to screen doesn't really go down that much. It's the sum of the yields. It doesn't go down that much to the original. However, when we completed the second stage of the search summary table, we found out that Medline had 68 of the 74 included articles, but our search had only picked up 41 of them, Embase 67, and our search had picked up 43, and Epistemonicus had 63, and our search picked up 46. So we're currently evaluating the search strategy for Embase. So we do have, we've done a little bit, so I'm just going to present it here. So the original search strategy had 144 lines. So that's when you take out, you've got nested terms. So it's when we take them all out and put them line by line. And we've edited it down to 7 lines, and they both find the 43 systematic reviews included in this evidence and gap map. And the numbers, the numbers at the bottom, so there's 152,000 in the original and 37,000 from the edited. And it's just to say that's before we put the systematic review search filter on. So that's just the topic search. Okay, so that's why the numbers are so high. And we are obviously going to, we're going to use the 67. So Embase had 67 of the included references, although our search originally only found 43. So we're now going to use those 67 to develop a revised search strategy to see if we can keep it, try and keep the numbers down, but make it more sensitive without it becoming too big. And that's the search strategy. That's a 7-line search strategy. Interesting there that you've got 3 entry terms in there as well. So some conclusions from these 2 projects or case studies. So for project 2 and remote monitoring, we needed to search a wider range of databases, and that was probably due to remote monitoring terminology being less consistent in the literature. And both evidence and gap maps required supplementary searching, and that is consistent with the other research that's done for systematic reviews. So it's good to remember that each review or evidence gap map is different, and we as information specialists or librarians are constantly trying to balance sensitivity and precision. However, as a team, we'll continue to complete search summary tables and search evaluations because we find them extremely valuable and we always learn something from doing them. So, for example, when we searched Epistemonicus, as I mentioned in the first project, our search wasn't very effective as we only found 7 of the included papers. So we took the learning from that, and when we ran the search for the second project in Epistemonicus, we found 46 of the 74 reviews, 11 of which were unique. So for the second project, we'll not only be evaluating the Embase search, but we will also look at our Medline and Epistemonicus searches to find out whether we could have done the searches differently. So we think doing search summary tables and evaluations are extremely useful at the end of a project, as it gives a good overview of search methods, and it adds to the body of literature to help us develop further evidence-based searching rather than experience-based searching. And they can help us as professionals advance our skills as searchers. And it also throws out really interesting sort of numbers and data that can lead to further information retrieval research. And as I understand it, there are some technical developments for search summary tables to be produced automatically. So that's very exciting. And hopefully there will be a technical solution for evaluating search strategies soon as well, because the search summary tables don't actually take that long to complete, but evaluating 144 lines of search does take a long time. So it'd be great to see the tables and the evaluations undertaken at the end of every systematic review, but unfortunately, they do take time. So thank you very much for listening. And obviously, there are questions at the end, and I'll stop sharing and pass back to Sarah.
Great, thank you so much, Alison. That was really interesting work. So yes, like Alison said, we're going to take questions at the end. Keep them coming in the chat. We might be able to answer some of them there. And we will move on now to our third and final speaker. So Carol Lefebvre is an independent information consultant. She was co-founder of the Cochrane Collaboration and senior information specialist at the UK Cochrane Centre, where she worked from its inception in 1992 to 2012. Prior to joining Cochrane, Carol was the deputy librarian at the University of Oxford Medical School Library. And currently, Carol is the lead convener of the Cochrane Information Retrieval Methods Group and lead author of the Searching chapter of the Cochrane Handbook. She is a qualified librarian and an honorary fellow of the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals. And Carol now focuses on training and consultancy in information retrieval for systematic reviews and other evidence synthesis. So with that, Carol, if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you for that introduction. I'll just get my slides up. Can I just check, Sarah, do you see my opening slide?
Yep, it looks great.
Okay, and do you now see slide 2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with my fellow sisters from the Campbell Information Retrieval Methods Group. And as Sarah says, today I'm going to be talking about Cochrane guidance on searching for and selecting studies for systematic reviews and evidence-based revision of the Cochrane Handbook for Systematic Reviews of Interventions. I'd firstly like to acknowledge my co-authors on the searching chapter, whose names you'll see listed below. And just to point out that the searching chapter is written on behalf of the Cochrane Information Retrieval Methods Group. So starting with some background as it impacts on Campbell, Sarah has already mentioned the Campbell guidance on searching. The Campbell guidance on searching was based on the Cochrane guidance and has been since 2011. We were very honoured and delighted to give permission to the Campbell collaboration to use our Cochrane handbook as a basis for their guidance so that they wouldn't have to repeat everything or redraft everything from scratch. We were thoroughly supportive of this, and from the Campbell perspective, they have also been very generous in their thanks and their citing of the Cochrane work. And Sarah has already mentioned the Kugley, Wade, Thomas, etc. Campbell guidance that was last updated in 2017. So from a Cochrane perspective, the Cochrane handbook is also used for other evidence syntheses where high methodological standards are required. It's not just relevant for those undertaking Cochrane reviews. It was fully revised and republished in October 2019 as a hardback book published by Wiley, but also as a free online version. And after minor corrections in 2021, a new, fully updated, corrected version was published in February 2022. We suspect that the next, or expect, I should say, that the next fully updated version will be published in August or September next year. And the online version is free, as I say, and open to all. And it's Cochrane's policy that this will always be the case for the Cochrane Interventions Handbook. So the next couple of slides just accompanied the press releases in October 29. This is our editor-in-chief, Carla Suarez-Weiser, saying that the handbook is deeply respected within the evidence-based community, so not just Cochrane. And again, here we have Julian Higgins, one of the senior editors of the handbook, saying we encourage those conducting systematic reviews, again, not just those conducting Cochrane reviews. And another part of the press release is in November 29, where we say that this is the first major update since 2008 and reflects current best practice. So the methods, the major revision in 2019, as I say, it was to be evidence-based. The recommendations in the handbook were to be based on the available evidence, in our case, in the field of searching for and selecting studies. The author team comprises mostly medical information specialists, but also some other related health professionals. And the evidence was incorporated from current awareness services to update the various sections of the chapters. So with regard to what the handbook comprises of, it's really important to remember that the searching chapter is different from all the other chapters in that the searching chapter has 3 parts. It has the main text, both online and in the printed version, but of course it's only ever the online version that's the latest, most up-to-date version. But it also contains a technical supplement, online only, and an appendix of resources. And the technical supplement contains more detailed guidance for many of the sections in the main text. And in many ways, the technical supplement is, you could say, more important than the main text. The topics, we cover sources to search, planning the search process, designing the strategies, managing the references, documenting and reporting the search process. It's very important both within Campbell and Cochrane and indeed other evidence synthesis to distinguish very, very clearly between conduct standards and reporting standards. So we have a specific section on documenting and reporting the search process, and then selecting studies and acknowledgements. I've extracted the key points from the handbook. These occur at the top of the handbook of the online version and indeed the printed version. And I've highlighted in italics those, I think, which are most generalizable to Campbell. So our first key point, and you'll find this constantly repeated throughout the handbook, is that review authors should work closely from the start of the protocol with an experienced medical healthcare librarian or information specialist. And we go on to say that studies, not reports of studies, are included in reviews, but identifying reports of studies is currently the most convenient approach to identifying the studies themselves. Again, with regard to those most generalizable to Campbell in italics, searches should aim for high sensitivity, which may result in relatively low precision. This is something which Alison has just mentioned. And search strategies should avoid using too many different concepts, but many, many different terms within the concepts. And then Sarah has already mentioned both free text and subject headings should be used. I've mentioned there's the appendix of resources. This lists resources such as sources to search, so databases, trials registers, regulatory agency sites, citation indexes, dissertation and thesis sources, and so on. But also lists guidance documents. So there's a guidance document as to how Central was created, the Cochrane Central Register of Controlled Trials. It lists the Ovid help files, the database guides, for example, for Medline and Embase. And we also cite the Campbell Collaboration Searching for Studies Guide, which Sarah and I have both mentioned already. With regard to the Messier standards, this is now Messier with 1C, the methodological expectations of Cochrane intervention reviews. The 2019 version of the handbook includes all the Messier standards, those that are mandatory and highly desirable. And by way of conclusion, I'd like to say that the Cochrane Handbook for Systematic Reviews was fully revised and republished in October 2019. The current revised and updated version was published in February 2022 with a next revision date of 2023. And the focus now throughout the handbook, not just in the searching chapter, but the focus throughout the handbook is that it should be evidence-based. And that the methodological expectations of Cochrane intervention reviews, i.e. Messier with 1C, were fully incorporated into the text in 2019. Specifically with regard to chapter 4, you'll find the principles of searching, the sources, the hints and tips, and how to select studies from those identified. And as I say, it's useful when conducting systematic reviews and other evidence syntheses, but of course it's essential, it's the Bible when conducting Cochrane reviews. And with respect to Campbell, we would encourage the Campbell collaboration to continue using the Cochrane Handbook searching chapter as the basis for the Campbell searching guidance. We're very, very supportive of that. We would encourage Campbell to continue using the Cochrane Messier standards as the basis for the Campbell Messier standards. And we should also encourage them to include their Messier standards within their guidance. And on the bottom of the screen, you have the link to the Campbell guidance there. So here you just have two screenshots. On the left, we have the methodological expectations of Campbell intervention reviews conduct standards. So that's the Messier standards with 2 C's for Campbell. And on the right, you have the screenshot of the cover page of the Searching for Studies Guide to Information Retrieval for Campbell Systematic Reviews. Here you have the references to the Cochrane Handbook. As I said, it's in 3 parts. So the first reference is the main text with the direct link at the bottom. The second is the technical supplement with the direct link at the bottom. And the third is the appendix of resources, which we're currently updating. And we hope that that will be updated by the end of this year. So I'd like to thank you there for your attention. And before I close, I'd like to particularly thank Vivian Welsh, who contacted me in June of this year and asked whether I would like to collaborate with the Campbell Information Retrieval Methods Group in putting on a panel for this event. And we all were very, very grateful for that invitation. And we do hope that you will have enjoyed this session, which looks at searching for studies both from a Campbell and a Cochrane perspective. So I'm now going to pass back to Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much, Carol. And I think at this point, we are going to go into questions. We have about 14 minutes or so. And I see that there's been a lot of really great questions in chat, some of which have been answered. You'll find them, I guess, in the answered questions tab. But I might just start with a question for Carol that I have, and that is, I don't know, sort of retrospectively, what kind of advice would you offer to a group, say Campbell, for instance, that might undertake a revision of some major guidance documents in the future? Any words of advice?
Well, I think I've already inferred, but I'll say it again, Sarah, because I'm a very strong believer in it. I think you should plagiarize shamelessly as long as you cite and credit. I think there's nothing worse than investing time and effort in repeating what somebody else has done. There are many, many similarities between Cochrane and Campbell, but of course we have our differences. So we should build on our similarities and focus our time and effort on our differences. So since the Kugli et al. Was last updated in 2017, if you look at the chronology, our next update was the 2019, which is evidence-based. And so the guidance currently in the Campbell searching guidance will not possibly have a very particular focus on the evidence base at that time. And even if it did, that's 5 years old. So what I would recommend is, firstly, you time any guidance to tie in with the expected Cochrane deadlines. So as I say, don't start doing something now and plan to publish it in July, when we will have done a lot of the work for you if only you'd waited until August or September. So what I would suggest you do is to plan a revision around then. And as I say, focus on your differences, our differences.
Yeah, that's great words of advice, Carol. Thank you. And I have to say, I'm it's very exciting to me that you're now, part of our Campbell Information Retrievals Methods Group, and that we're able to build some nice bridges across our two organizations. Exactly. Yeah, because I think we're obviously working toward many of the same goals here.
Indeed, we are. I don't know whatever happened to the liaison between Campbell and Cochrane. We did liaise in the very, very early days, and then somehow that all sort of fizzled out. So the rekindling of this relationship, which had already happened, I have to say, before Vivian's invitation. I think we'd already, when you rekindled, Sarah, the Campbell Information Retrieval Methods Group discussion list, which had become defunct somehow. But when you rekindled that, I think that's when our relationship restarted. And for anyone on this call who's not already a member of the Campbell Information Retrieval Methods Group discussion list, then I would suggest that you contact Sarah after this event and ask to be joined to that list.
Yes, definitely. All right. So let's go to some of the questions in the box. It looks like, Alison, you've already answered a good number of these. Are there any of these that you'd like to speak to that would be helpful to elaborate on here?
Yes, I could. I'm just going to look at the answered questions. Patrick asked about guidance. Yeah, I'm working with Naomi, and some of you might know my other colleague, Morwenna. We're working on, maybe not guidance, but some suggestions on how best to do this, because we've each done it kind of independently, or in slightly different ways. So we're going to sort of come together to see, particularly the evaluation bit, to see if we can come up with some simpler ways of doing it. But who knows, some technical solution may present itself before we get there. So I can't remember, can't seem to get the other ones. There's a couple from Kate. But my box doesn't seem to want to move down. I think it was about the time. It was about the time taken, I think, on completing a search summary table. If you've got all the information that you need, it's fairly straightforward, but getting that information together can be a bit tricky. If we're embedded in most of our systematic reviews, which means we know it when things come to an end, and we know what the included studies are, and we've got them in an EndNote library, so it's all slightly easier. Whereas if you're a step away, then you might have to just, even just get the included papers out of a systematic review. It can be quite tricky, so that sort of thing can take time, and making sure you've got all your search strategies, you've got your EndNote libraries or your references before they're deduped. So it's making sure you've got all those things. And once you've done that, all you're doing is searching within, we use EndNote. So we just search within EndNote, and it will tell, it will say, because it's non-deduped, it will say, yeah, it was picked up in M-based PsycInfo and Medline. You just stick a little X in the table, and the formula are at the bottom, so it just adds them all up for you. So that bit's probably the simplest bit, but it will also depend on how many included papers you've got. But I think it probably takes you about 30 minutes for 30 papers, something like that. That's the stage one. The stage two would take longer.
And maybe I'll just put in a little plug here for a project that I'm involved with to build an R package and Shiny app that will ultimately, I think, make search summary tables much easier and quicker. This is very soon to be released. Essentially a tool where you can import your database exports across the different searches that you did. It will deduplicate while maintaining the source information of each study. You can import citation files for each phase of the review. So those screened at title abstract, those ultimately included, and build a lot of great visualizations that give you information about where those studies came from, how many of the included studies came from a given source. And then we're hoping in a second phase to be able to spit out a nice search summary table as well. So that's coming soon. It's called Site Source. Keep an eye out for that. Yeah, and Hillary had a question here. I think this might be for me, building on one of Kate's questions that I think I answered. And she's wondering if reviews are reporting searching ProQuest dissertations and theses only, or if they're looking at open access repositories as well. And that's a great question. I think in our sort of data extraction process, we're not extracting detailed information about all of the different sources searched. We did capture that, but not in a very structured way. But just sort of anecdotally, I can say that there definitely are other dissertations databases, maybe sort of country-specific sources that are being searched for that type of literature, largely ProQuest dissertations and theses, though. But again, it's a great question, and I think doing a deeper analysis of the types of the specific sources that are searched in Campbell reviews could be another interesting avenue. Amy had a couple of interesting questions. One quick one, and I've always wondered this myself, is there a preferred way to pronounce MECCIR versus MECIR? And Carol, I don't know if you have insights into that.
Yeah, I'm dying to answer that one. In the very early days of Messier and Cochrane, which is probably about 15 years ago or more now, we first of all went back to basics and talked about how we should pronounce Messier, because it had been proposed that it should be pronounced Messiah. And I said, please no. Cochrane has always been a very staunchly non-religious organization, recognizing that we're a worldwide organization and welcoming people of all religions and none. So please let us not pronounce Messier as Messiah. Partly because it may be offensive to some people. I know I'm saying this in a light-hearted way, but it could genuinely be offensive to some people, and it could be what would be the word? Inappropriate, thought inappropriate by others. So firstly, we had that discussion. I've recently been peer reviewing an article where I requested that the authors referred to Cochrane Messier, and they kicked back and said, no, Messier already is Cochrane with the C in the middle, and it's tautology. And strictly speaking, they're correct. But I think there would be no harm in saying Messier bracket, Campbell close bracket, because then that recognizes that that the two C's in the middle relate to Campbell, and the fact that you've put it in brackets means it's not part of the name. So, Amy, if you think that there's going to be any confusion, I would pronounce both as Messier. I don't think that you can do anything particularly fancy with the two C's. I did notice in the Kugli guide, though, that they were referring to Messier at that time as MEC2IR. I don't know whether that, I then double checked to make sure that that's not what you're calling it now, and you're not on your website. So whilst you persist in calling it MECCIR, which I think is appropriate, I would, as I say, just put in brackets afterwards Campbell, if you wanted to really be clear that people knew that you meant the Campbell standards.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Well, what about you two? That's my 2p worth, but what do you people think?
That makes sense to me. I definitely always pronounce it Messier, but never know quite how to distinguish it from the other Messier. And but that's a helpful way of thinking about it. Alison?
No, yeah, nothing further to add. That was really helpful, though, Carol. I like to put it in brackets afterwards. Yeah.
So one other quick question before we wrap up. Amy had a question about overlapping method. This is, an interesting question. Methods text between protocols and published reviews. What is the general practice around repurposing or just reusing, word for word text that you published in a protocol and then repeating that in the ultimate published review? I don't know, are there any thoughts here on that topic?
Well, it won't be word for word, will it? Because you'll be changing the tense, if nothing else, because the protocol will be written in the future tense, and the review, you then start with the protocol and change the tense, as I understand it, to the past tense, but then, of course, make any amendments. And it's likely that between the protocol and the review, you will have made a lot of amendments in your search approach, I would have thought.
Yeah, that's a good point, for sure. All right, I think with that, we have about a minute before we close. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up with few final words. Again, many thanks to our presenters today, Carol and Alison. It was really great to work with you on this panel. Hope we have future panels together, and looking forward to our future work on these efforts. And then again, just to thank our many supporters and folks who sponsored the What Works Global Summit. Couldn't have pulled off this event without their support. So, and thanks to our attendees. Very happy to have you with us, and thanks for all the great questions. And hope you enjoy the rest of your summit.
Thank you.
Bye.